Right.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for taking the time out of your, I'm sure, very busy day.
Oh, no, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
First, congratulations on Back to the Future the Musical. It's getting rave reviews.
That's
So
fantastic.
I know it's been a bit of a long, it's been a bit of a long road for you, given the lead up to it, in addition to the pandemic. But how's everything going?
Everything's been going great. You know, we had our first preview night on the 20th. And it's interesting, you know, we went through this whole life cycle in Manchester with, you know, rehearsing, moving into the theater, previews, opening night. And it's kind of like we're going through the whole thing again, but it's
Right.
It's been great. It really has been fantastic. We're excited about it.
Excellent. First, you collaborated with Glen Ballard on the production, whom you've worked with a number of times before.
That's
I
right.
know he's got a little theater background, but this is a pretty new collaboration for the both of you. Can you talk about how this is different from your previous collaborations as far as your process is concerned?
Well, you know, in terms of our process, not really. We got to dabble in this area with Polar Express,
Right.
because there were a number of songs that were driving scenes, and Glenn and I had to approach that as if we were doing a musical, because in a sense we were. Those songs had to be written, recorded, or written, approved, recorded,
Right.
in order for Bob Zemeckis to shoot to that material. So we have, you know, between the two of us, had some of that. But this, of course, is on a vastly different level. And it's been absolutely amazing. I mean, Glenn is he's the most amazing artist, writer, storyteller, and more importantly, collaborator. You know, I think all of his years of experience working with talent has equipped him most magnificently to work with folks who, you know, are always concerned about sharing their inner process, their inner thoughts. And he's just been a dream to work with always from day one. So we're having a great time.
Right. Now the score, the original score for Back to the Future's got it's layered with various motifs and character themes. Were you able to incorporate those into the stage production?
We absolutely were. It's interesting. We've incorporated some of that material into actual songs, and so that's been that part of it. But another thing that we've been able to do here, and again, this is thanks to Bob Gale, who has written the book, and to John Randall, our director, is we've actually been able to score a musical. And it's interesting because there are some magnificent visual effects all throughout the production. And we just thought early on, well, why don't we score those like we would if we were doing a film? And, you know, it's interesting. I think Bob Gale and Bob Zemeckis always loved blurring lines between certain kinds of effects and cinema and all. And I think that's kind of what's happening in part here, is that you may actually wonder at any given moment, wait a second, am I in a movie or am I watching a stage production? So it's been fun.
Yeah, I've heard there's some impressive effects, climbing the clock tower and the arrival of the DeLorean. So it's great to hear that those are punched up with some of your music.
Yeah, we haven't shied away from it.
What's been the biggest challenge so far in adapting the film score to the stage?
Let's see, biggest challenge. I would say one of the biggest challenges has been, you know, when you work on a piece of film, at some point, the film is called locked. And it can be very late in the game these days. But at some point, you can say, well, there it is. That's it. The interesting thing here is every night, it's different. every night something can happen that you really wish didn't happen. And so you have to build into a sequence like the clock tower, which is probably our longest, most complicated sequence. You have to build in all of these safety nets in a sense. So what if for some reason our actor doesn't get somewhere, or gets there sooner because of a whole world of other complications that they have to deal with. Somehow, you can't just push a button and let it all go, because it's different every night. So that's probably been the biggest challenge, is how do we accommodate the liveness of the production, because that is what's great about it. It's live every night. I would say that's one of the bigger challenges. We think we're doing okay with it. You'll let us know. Have you seen it yet?
I have not. No, I'm stateside. Okay. I probably won't be going overseas anytime for a while. So, was waiting for it to leave the West End and hit Broadway.
Yeah, well, we're hoping for that. That would be fantastic.
I'd like to ask about the original writing process for the score back in '85. It's been said that Steven Spielberg was not initially happy with the treatments that you were writing.
That's not what I've heard. That's not what I've heard.
Really?
Yes. And it's interesting how this can happen.
Right. Oh, this is great. I want to hear it from the horse's mouth. This is great.
Yeah, but I can truly say it's not what I've heard after all these years. Here's what I have heard. It was a very big movie.
Sure.
And I did not have the level of credits that would warrant my doing something this costly, this important. So I think in the most reasonable way, what I've heard was that, there was talk about maybe having a more experienced composer to work on this. And, thank goodness for Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale. They kind of stood behind me. The story I've heard is that when Mr. Spielberg heard what I was first doing, he was very pleased about it. But I think it was what they would call a tough sell for the Bobs to even allow me to have the opportunity.
Sure.
So it's a slightly different spin on what you're talking about.
Well, that's great to hear, because the story has always gone that Mr. Spielberg was not totally happy with what he was hearing. So Bob Zemeckis was putting in some temp music in to show him the editing process. And then he eventually put in your score, your updated, the one that ended up in the film. And Spielberg said, that's what we should be going with, something like that.
Well, right. That is accurate in terms of what I've heard. And you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe the part you're talking about happened before the good part, which is the part I remember.
Which is part, and that's all that really matters.
I just remember the part that he liked it eventually.
Well, that's good. Did you, were there any other versions of it early on that you had worked on that you had tweaked and maybe ended up using in other projects? Or was it, if what we saw in the final film, was that the original?
Oh, no, that was it. And it was the product of pure desperation and fear.
Well, it's all it takes sometimes.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's one of the more helpful things anyone who's doing what we're all doing can have, is the right amount of desperation and fear. It somehow gets the fires lit. And then there's a chance, like in Dot's brain, for some synapses to make some new connections. But yeah, I just worked through the film, and it's always a mad dash. Interestingly, back in those days, there were no such things as mock-ups. So I remember the first day of recording, wanting to get it over with if there was a problem, I began, of course, with the clock tower because I thought, well, if there's going to be a problem, let's just go for it. And so there we are in this magnificent studio, and we're starting with the clock tower. And it is the first time Mr. Zemeckis heard a note of his score. And so every day was like that. He had never heard these cues before because there was no way to really render them back then. Rather terrifying for directors.
Imagine.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Your career has been interesting to me because you started off, and I feel as if you kind of had a signature Alan Silvestri sound for not unlike John Williams.
Mm-hmm.
And as your career progressed, you've become considerably more diverse in your writing. Is that been intentional, or has that just been dictated by the projects you've worked on?
It's really been dictated by the projects. I mean, it's always been about the need, so you know, when I was offered a romantic comedy, like for instance, Father and the Bride, the movie then dictated my response to it, and it's never been different. I don't so far after 50 years, I don't write music for the concert stage. I don't write music for other things. I write music for film. And from that point of view, the film goes first. I watch a piece of film and I respond to it. So the diversity comes from as you say, the diversity of projects. You listen to the film and the director's direction, and that dictates where I go.
I understand you still primarily write on guitar, is that correct?
No, not really.
No?
I did in the very beginning. I was playing a bit of piano, and I still play a bit of piano, a small bit. Primarily, though, write on the piano and have through all of the everything probably after the Chips days.
Okay. Really? Okay.
Where I was sitting on a floor with a brand new video machine my wife had bought for me, with my first episode of the second season of Chips, with a guitar in my hand.
I'm curious as to who you think would win an MCU score showdown, yourself or Michael Giacchino. If you and Michael Giacchino had to go fisticuffs, who would win an MCU composing?
You know, thankfully, I probably will not get to vote in that. Michael, of course, is spectacular, and he's done a lot of great things for the MCU. I'm just going to stay out of that one. If it goes to Michael, I'll be the first one to send a really beautiful bottle of champagne with hugs and kisses all over it. He's a fantastic writer, fantastic guy.
Speaking of the MCU, if you don't mind, you composed one of the most iconic film scenes in recent history, if not all of film history, in Endgame, which is the portal scene, which was a culmination of over 20 films. Right. Was that moment, did you have conversations with the Russos about the weight of that moment?
Absolutely. The Russos were magnificent through the whole process because the level of expectation on them for Infinity War and then for Endgame, which was completely on another level, through all of that expectation, they never kind of put any panic that they may have been experiencing. I'll never know. They never transferred any of that to me. They always kept it kind of lovely and creative. But I had heard that over time, that was a sequence of tremendous concern for Marvel and for Joe and Anthony, because, as you say, it was this coming together of 20 plus years of all of these characters. And, that kind of thing, you can have a moment of indulgence where you go, oh my God, what will I do? But you've got to broom that away as quickly as possible. And you just have to start again watching the film, seeing what comes out of you in response to that. And from that point of view, there was a lot coming out of the film in that sequence. And I just follow along with what Joe and Anthony were showing us.
Did you have you seen the audience reactions to that scene?
Well, I have to tell you, we being my wife, Sandra, and I, we had a magical invitation from Kevin Feige, Joe, and Anthony. They invited us to go on the bus with them the preview night of the opening of Endgame. So it's not opening night, it's the night before. And they invited us on the bus. I think we went to 4 or 5 theaters that night.
Wow.
And we went to the Marathon Theater, which was unbelievable. Those people had been in the theater for 3 or 4 days nonstop, watching every Marvel film back to back. But they then took us to a theater in Westwood, packed house, and Sandra and I have never been to a screening of a film like this. It was like we were in a stadium, and with avid fans who had really looked forward to this. And they yelled, screamed, cried, and cheered through the entire film. So when Portals arrived, and that would have, been a great moment for any Marvel fan, regardless of music and anything else. They were literally standing up as those reveals came one after the next, and it was breathtaking.
That's fantastic. Back to the Future, the musical, playing in the West End right now. If you could adapt any of the films you've worked on in the past into a musical outside of Back to the Future, what would you choose?
That's really, it's going to be impossible to answer, but I'll at least tell you why. Having been through the life cycle of this now,
you would never do it again?
No. I would do it again. I would do it again, but I think it would be measured by who was involved and how it was all being conceived. This was amazing that Bob Zemeckis and Bob Gale were behind this. As you know, it's taken 14 years. And a large part of that is that we never had this pressure to deliver something by Wednesday or 1 month from now. It was never approached like that. It was the two Bobs who were saying, we think this could work. We want it to be wonderful. And however long that takes is how long that takes. So I would have to say, any of these other projects I've worked on, it would really have so much to do with the people involved and the spirit of how they wanted to accomplish this. I don't know that I'll ever have this experience again like this. I think Glen Ballard would say the same thing. And I think he would also say it's because of originally the two Bobs, Bob Zemeckis, Bob Gale, then John Randall, who's been this inclusive, embracing, supportive director, Colin Ingram, who's been shepherding us through pandemics and all kinds of problems. That overall equation of the players in this has been magnificent. So, yeah, I'd have to look at all of that and see if you could ever roll dice again and have that outcome. It would contribute to my willingness to spend another 14 years on something.
Well, congratulations again. I'm looking forward to seeing it when it finally moves stateside here.
Fantastic.
And thanks for your time. I appreciate it. It's been a
Well,
pleasure.
thank you so much. Now, I know you had to get up early, so I didn't. I thank you.
I got to get the kids in the bus anyway, so it's okay.
Okay. All right. Well,
Appreciate it.
thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Been a pleasure.
Likewise.
Bye-bye.